Okay, well, let's get into it. Okay, so I'm gonna get going here. So I'm gonna make you a commitment. You guys have no idea who I am. I'm guessing maybe one or two of you max read the synopsis or did a little bit of creeping about me because I don't even have a social media account. But I don't have anything to sell to you. I don't have a book signing happening outside. I'm not no business affiliations. I'm not trying to convince you to do anything. I'm just some guy that happened to be part of some really cool projects, and I get to paid to share my story from time to time. So I've learned some things along the way, and I'd like to share them with you. So I'm going to make you a promise that I'm not going to waste any of your time. And in about 56, 57 minutes, you'll at least have one gold nugget to take home with you. I don't know what that is. I'm going to serve you up with lots of them. Everybody takes a different gold nugget home. And if nothing else, I'll at least give you a reason to not look at your phone for an hour. But you're going to have to work for that nugget. There's a good chance that some of or most of what I'm going to bring up isn't going to feel super comfortable. It's going to stir up something inside of you. It should. And maybe even agitate you a little, if that's the right word. It did yesterday. But just know that this is intentional. That's part of the point of this presentation. And I invite you to witness this and what comes up inside of you, and maybe make note of it. My central organizing theme for the next hour is it's simple. It's that the future looks to be just a touch challenging. It doesn't matter if you own a business, you basically just have to be turning oxygen into carbon dioxide, and you're gonna have some challenges. But the silver lining in that is if we're aware of the challenges that we have built into our meat suits, we can persevere in that. All right, so let's get into it. If you guys are all right with it, we're going to start with the smaller venues. I can always do this. I like to start with a little bit of an icebreaker, and you're not going to have to turn to the person next to you or anything like that. I'm going to ask you just to imagine the future. What do you think the future looks like? So if you're comfortable closing your eyes, you can. Some people get weirded out by that, but just take a minute, let that lasagna settle. And if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. And I want you to just imagine what it looks like in your world 5 years from now. We'll take a couple minutes here. Maybe thinking about like where you are, who's around you, what you're doing, maybe what's happening. What does it feel like? Now, if you're at a party or a rave, I'm going to have to pull you out of that. We're not going to stay here for long. Let's fast forward a bit. Let's go 20 years from now. So the year's 2045-ish, let's say. What does that look like in your head? How is that any different than 5 years from now? If you want to come back, if you did have your eyes closed. So try to keep track of those things that that came up while you're in that exercise. We don't have to share them. That's kind of a personal thing. That's not what this is about. But what came up inside you, if you did participate in that exercise, is a little bit of a peephole into obviously how you see the world and how you move through the world. What's more important is it's likely that some of you struggled with that simple exercise, but that's to be expected because it's neurologically baked into our noodles. We crave certainty. We don't really like to think about the unknown. And I came across this in, I know Christy didn't really give much of a background on me. So I used working with CEOs and whatever, C-suiters for 10 years. I would come up against this all the time where I just could not get these leaders to think about the future. They were always squirm away from it. And I became really fascinated with what was causing that. So I found this research, and essentially what it is the same impulses that used to make our far ancestors, our chimpanzee brothers, be concerned about what that rustle in the grass is and whether or not that rustle in the grass is going to eat us for dinner. That very same thing causes us so-called modern humans to stress about things like, what are balance sheets and, where the next dollar is going to come from. And for me, I stress out quite a bit about my neighbor down the road who, for some reason, can't barbecue in anything but his underpants and completely hammered with like these huge licks of flames coming out of his barbecue. So I stress out about that. It's what we're wired to do. So our brains crave certainty and they loathe uncertainty, both of those things make thinking about the future very, very difficult. And to some of us, that sense of uncertainty actually registers as a pain signal in the brain. So again, this isn't a biology lesson. It's just a simple stopping point along the way here so you can understand where I'm going with this. So this is us. We're this outdated technology trying to function in the world that's asking so much of us. We have this old operating system, you know, the top part of the brain built over top of the limbic brain, which is reptilian brain. So it's complex and complicated, this computer that we're moving through the world with. And, you know, even the most advanced supercomputers now don't even know what happens between our ears. But we do understand it to some degree, and it does have some inherent flaws. And there's plenty of reasons to feel like the world is a bit uncertain. This is a good one. This sociopath, you know, who knows where he's going to jam that index finger next. It looks like he's going to put in the arse of progress right now. You know, you got this guy or this guy, and this isn't meant to be political. These are the types of things that, or even this guy. I think we're in the F Trudeau sticker capital of the world right now. So this is probably going to go over pretty good. I know for me, this is a picture that gets me pretty worked up. I'm 47 years old, and everything I read is telling me that this thing is going to take my job. I used to be a mechanical engineer, and I see now what some of these firms are doing. This artificial intelligence is doing in 6 minutes what it used to take me 6 months to do. Like that's pretty radical to see that coming in. Just like it was literally 18 months ago, these firms didn't have this technology. So that's uncertainty for me or people like me. Oh, and then there's this, you know, we've had a couple of orange years in a row. Our planet is changing. Doesn't matter which team you're on, it definitely is changing. So there's more than enough to stress about in the world, and it's not why I'm here. I'm just trying to tease a little bit out of you and to elicit that emotion to see where you guys go. So I'm going to take a hot minute here to introduce a concept that I've been using with a lot of leaders that I work with. How many of you have heard of the term VUCA before? VUCA. Perfect. That means you didn't read the synopsis, which is good. In the 1980s, the U.S. Army came up with this acronym to describe this new complex world that we were moving into after the Cold War. This is what it stands for. So the V is for volatile, and volatility is you know, of these challenges or changes that are unexpected and of unknown duration. We don't know they're coming. We don't know how long they're going to last. Anybody remember that COVID thing? We have COVID amnesia now. We don't want to think about it. Uncertainty, the basic cause and effect of an event are known. So we know what could happen, but we don't know that it's actually going to happen. Complexity, I mean, today's reality has so many interconnected parts and moving pieces. I mean, just this last year trying to get my kids into school, I had an app for the bus, for their school, and you know, I can't pay a bill without having, like, it's just, everything just seems so much harder now. So things are more interconnected. If we're not paying for something, we are the product now. And the last one is ambiguous. With this extreme radical change that we're seeing, there's an increasing amount of unknowns. We don't know what the future is going to look like. So am I going through all this? Well, I like acronyms. I like that there's something that I can hold on to and I can use a word to describe a feeling that could come up. And I'll use this in strategy sessions now with business leaders that I work with. When they start to think, they start to trend back to the norm. They start to think comfortably. It's like, I remember that thing, VUCA. You don't know what the future is going to look like. So don't bank on that. You know, one example is I work with a business where they just thought they could go get a loan for something. They needed a new machine. But if you've tried to get a loan for a small business lately, not only is the interest rate higher, but the rules of getting a loan are quite a bit different. this company had to present an entire business case for what would happen if the next COVID pandemic hit. How could they pay their bill? So it's different. So VUCA, this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, is the future of your reality, my reality, our shared reality. And there's that pain in the brain. So some of you might actually be saying, screw this guy, I don't want to listen to this anymore. Why did I come here? The lasagna wasn't even that good. But that's what's happening, and that's what I'm trying to work with you guys with today. So this is me with my pain in the brain. When I was bootstrapping my first business about 20 years ago in my garage. And the biggest and hardest question that I had to answer was whether or not I was going to have a web page. So yeah, things are a little bit different now. So we don't have to actually feel that pain in the brain. It shows up like an impulse that when we feel that certainty slip away, we don't want to look at that inevitability. Does anybody? Well, I promised you a gold nugget. So maybe the rest of this presentation is going to go right past you, or you're ready to leave right now. But does anybody know why an ostrich does this? This could be your gold nugget today. Oh man. See, I was always taught when I was a kid that if an ostrich was scared, they stuck their hole in the ground, or their head in the ground, and that never made sense to me, because that seems like pretty easy target for prey. Where's it going to go? Can't even see what's coming. But an ostrich does this because it's not a bird of flight. It actually can't fly up into a tree to lay its eggs. So it lays its eggs in the ground. And right now that ostrich is turning the eggs to make sure that they stay warm. So there's a nugget for you. I promised you one nugget. But if this is you and VUCA's out on the plains, then I'm sharing with you that you're gonna be in trouble. But there's opportunity in that. So by now you guys probably get an idea of how I see the world. And I'm going to color in a few of those spaces for you with my story. My story starts here, like probably many of yours, but not like actually here. I'm not that old. They weren't using wood derricks when I was a kid. But I was born on the Canadian prairies in an oil town up in Cold Lake, a town that was transformed by the oil boom, much like many of you. So being born and raised there, in my mid-20s, I finished getting programmed by a university, and then I started my engineering firm, and I was designing drilling rigs. So this is what I did. This should get me a little bit of street cred with this audience now. This is about what 40 or so of us would do on a day-to-day basis. We would design these things to poke holes in our planet, in search of that fossilized sunlight beneath our feet. You know, I can be honest and a little bit vulnerable that part of me was a bit embarrassed about this. What that was, you know, it's still hard for me to put a finger on it, but I came to realize that even if I wasn't doing that, somebody else was going to do it. This is the reality of our life. We have fossil fuels baked into our lives. If I wasn't going to be doing it, somebody else was going to be doing it. So I switched my thinking, and I, you know, kind of classic lemons to lemonade scenario. And I thought to myself, what if I use these, you know, this highly profitable energy sector to help me do some cool projects? So yeah, capitalism is what we got. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to suck. So we called our little engineering firm this wooden Trojan horse. I don't know if you guys know the story of Troy, but essentially what it was is there's an army inside of this horse. They think it's a gift. The army jumps out, kills everybody in the fort. But we weren't going to jump out and kill anybody. Our little engineering firm was this decoy, or this wooden horse, and what we were doing is we were just masquerading around inside the oil and gas sector, using some of these revenues to do some cool things, like I said. So here I am. This is where my problem comes up that I'm going to share with you. I needed more space. This is me about maybe 10 years ago. This is me and my ex-wife leading a corporate retreat. In this picture, she's huffing and puffing, about to blow my life down. And this is a tough room. Okay. It's a bad joke. It's a really bad joke. I put that one in there just to see if everybody's alive. You know, I gotta never lasagna again. That's a tough act to follow. I see some eyes closing already back there. May have to do some jumping jacks. But no, why she's my ex-wife is not part of this talk. That's a different presentation. But our little business was growing. We needed more space, probably a problem that some of you have had to some degree. So I went out into the world to find some more office space to put my work family into, and this is what I found. Buildings that were built to minimum specification, poor ventilation, minimal lighting, code insulation, no, few trees, shrubbed up a little bit. I didn't want to own one of these boxes, let alone put my staff into them. I didn't want to work in one specifically. So a year before that, I was fortunate enough to be able to build my own house. And being a mechanical engineer, I put these 2 huge tracking solar arrays in the backyard, and which I thought was pretty cool. And I learned that there was a better way to do it, essentially. So I got this better way street credibility that I call. So after being really disappointed with what I found with commercial real estate, I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I went back to the Edmonton commercial construction marketplace with a grocery list. Said, you know what, this is all junk you guys are building. I want something that's going to last a couple hundred years, something that's going to, be something I'm going to be proud of. I want something that's, sustainable, healthy, and beautiful. Like, okay, Dennis, but I want it to make sense. It can't just be like a science experiment. I want to have fun doing it, and I want it to be something that other people are going to learn from. Oh, and by the way, I want it to be powered by the sun and LEED platinum. So you can imagine what, like if you've never built a building before, a commercial building, even a house, like you get 0 out of 8. You don't get 1 or 2. This doesn't happen, let alone to have all 8 of those things. So this is what everybody looked at me and they thought I was high. Like I was a rookie developer. I'd never built an office building before. So they just chalked it up as, oh, that's cute, Dennis. But yeah, you don't do that here. But I wasn't convinced. I'd seen a bunch of projects that they were doing in Scandinavia. It's like, man, if they can do it there, why can't we do it here? They wake up in the morning and take a dump and eat bacon and eggs just like we do. Like, why can't we do that? So I spent about 4 months convincing these guys that thought I was crazy, that they were crazy to not take the project on. And this wouldn't be much of a presentation, and I definitely wouldn't be standing here if we didn't pull it off. So big surprise, we did it. And again, this isn't a presentation about the building itself. You can probably find that on YouTube or something. But this is the building. It's on the south side of Edmonton right now. It's 30,000 square feet. It's powered by the sun. It's got this baseball cap of the entire roof's covered with photovoltaic. So it's a cool building. The gold nugget isn't that. The gold nugget's in how we did it. And I'm going to try and connect how I solved this problem of everybody thinking that I was crazy to a problem that you're trying to solve today, or maybe you're going to be up against in the future. Maybe that's when you'll remember this. So, yeah. Let's say that there's some big challenge or endeavor that you've got, and it could be just staying awake after eating a plate of lasagna right now. I can see that's a challenge for some of you. This bingo dabber dot here in the middle, let's just say this is your problem or idea or challenge. And in this case, my office build project is this dot. So I wanted all these things, these 8 bullet points packed into this bingo dot. And I'm trying to simplify this. This is what the market saw. They saw this unicorn project. I'm going to simplify it down to just green building. And I knew that I had a 0.0 repeating chance of getting what I wanted if I went about it business as usual. If I got a traditional team, I just went as like, hey, I need a building. Here's a big stack of money. The bank finances it. I find it, man. There was no way I could ever do that. So I knew that because everybody thought I was crazy. So they're looking to me to figure out how to do that. So this is systems thinking, and most of us don't do this when we go to solve a problem. We start to jump to solutions. We just want to make it go away because we don't like having problems in our life. So very rarely will we actually figure out where to start with the problem. So when you're doing systems thinking, you map out the complexities and the interdependencies inside of that problem. And you imagine if you were to make any sort of change inside of that problem, what would affect it. So we looked at the levers or the things that would affect that, and we came up with 4 things. So these are the classics. You got money, technology, time, and the people, the team. So you're going to have to, this is your turn now. So where do you think most of the professionals getting involved in this project, or even probably in your life, where do you think most people focus their money? Damn it, I gave the answer away. They focus their energy on money, the budget. Everybody was worried about this. It was like, where's the money going to come from for this? And you can't do that. And they saw that this was my first project. So like, well, this guy isn't, Jeff Bezos super yacht guy. We're not interested. Where do you think the biggest opportunity comes from? It's the team. So you can have as much money as you want. You can have, NASA technology. You can have 10 years to do it. But if the people doing it aren't engaged, they're not interested, you forget it. You can just burn your pile of money. So we started looking at the team then. So we knew that the team was the best way of getting this project to become a reality. So we looked inside of there, it's like, well, these are the things that actually motivate or incentivize a team or contribute to a team's effectiveness. So we have contract communication, this idea of like, what's the plan, and then the strategy behind that. So I'll fast forward a little bit here. In the other presentations I do to the construction marketplace, less than 5% of people guess that the reason that this building is standing is because of the contract. So I knew that I needed the conditions to create an environment for an architect and an engineer and the construction team to be coming up with something that's unique and novel. For the most part, construction contracts are designed to make lawyers fat, and they excrete change orders. It's a horrible process. I had a buddy of mine in my EO group. I told him what I was going to do. He's like, Dennis, that's a bad idea. I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, no, you shouldn't get into commercial construction. He goes, how about you give me $10 million? I'll kick you in the balls and it'll feel exactly the same. And sometimes it did feel like that. But in the traditional way of doing things, it's a nightmare. So I needed this contract. I went out and I found this thing called integrated project delivery. And what it did was it allowed the team to work cohesively. We had 0 change orders. We delivered the building under budget at market price. So I had something that was about automatically 30% of higher value than the 2 buildings on either side of me. And I did it in 11 months. The original team said it was going to take 3.5 years. You can't do highly innovative, hyper innovative things unless you have the boundary conditions set up, because everybody just wants to start from something they've already got. I call it save as syndrome. An architect comes like, oh, I did this thing to this parking lot over here. I did this thing. Oh, look at this cool facade detail I did over there. And you try to mash that together and it's a nightmare. So getting people to start from a blank piece of paper and being engaged in it was how we did it. Okay. What I'm presenting to you in a very short period of time is that the answer to most of your guys' problems isn't exactly what you think it is right off the get-go. You have to figure out where the biggest lever is, and it's hard work to do that. And our brain is wired to make us look in another direction. This was arguably my favorite thing to do at the building. These are pretty sure these are grade 4 kids. I love the grade 4s because I think it's around the last year that kids have before they get a phone. I found like the grade 5 and the 6 kids were just in a different world. They're already starting to get pretty heavily programmed at that point. And these kids knew more about that systems thinking I just showed you and the interconnectivity of everything on the earth than like my senior project managers did. These kids are so smart. So I learned more from these kids, and I love doing these tours for that reason. And what it showed me is that inherently, when we come into this world, we actually get it more so than we get it now, because we have that desire for certainty. Our brain starts to be conditioned to, be a good little worker boy. These kids don't give a crap about that. They're curious. They want to know how everything works in the world. So using systems thinking, like I just showed you how we got that building done, and leaning into there are problems coming and there's challenges coming, those two things, they're hard to do, but that discipline is going to be required for your business or your enterprise to succeed going forward. So quick recap. One, we know that things aren't going to get a whole lot easier. VUCA, we learned what that is. I can keep beating that one to death. Two, biologically, we're set up to fail because our brains hate feeling that feeling of uncertainty. And three, I just showed you an example of some tools that are at our disposal to work with this program and this hardware that we have between our ears. So this next piece is the why piece. Everybody's heard of like Simon Sinek, or there's people that have beat the why thing to death. So I'm just going to touch on this, but because it is a really important piece of it. Every story has a why. Every good story has a why. Every successful story. And thriving in VUCA you need a clear understanding of not only what the hell you're doing, but why are you even doing it? Why are you here today? There's obviously something propelling you to do that. So without a North Star or a purpose, a raison d'etre, it's easy to get lost, especially when, we have something like this in our back pockets jamming our signal all the time. Why are we doing the things we're doing? So back to my story. I had great staff. This is us. We had this thing every year. We called it Nerd Day. So we dress up for Nerd Day. They all hate that I put this picture in my slide decks, but it really proves the point that we were quite a family. We would do dumb things like this. So we were making change. I felt, this is me up here getting super nerdy, that these people that worked with me every day deserved a cool place to be in. The second part of my why for that building was this. I'm guessing most of you have some of these. These are my creatures. And I feel strongly that anybody that has the means to make change or do something better should do it. It should be called negligence if you've got a boatload of money and a boatload of time and you don't actually use that for good. So I actually felt obligated. I was fortunate enough to take that oil and gas abundance, and I was, in my mid-30s, and I felt like I should do something with that. So the future of my children, the well-being of my staff, that's the why. That was what was in here to actually get me to the point where I could keep opening those little Matryoshka dolls to find the root of that problem. What's your why? Okay, I got a bone to pick here. You guys are gonna have to put your hands up at some point. So I'm actually gonna stop talking until we get some engagement from the crowd. Who here is a list maker? Sticky notes on the fridge, in the car. Yeah, love them lists. All right. Without your list, how do you get shit done? That's how we do it, right? Mine's always, there's so many things to do. So this thing called planning, list making, whatever, it's been around as long as I have. And I'm going to show you why it's at the root of why so many businesses fail. The list maker is there now, like, why did I put up my hand? So planning. People naturally plan out their activities and what they want to do. I've got lists in the car. I got to get my kids to school. I got to pick up whatever. There's always, I got to get here for today. There's lists. There's things in my computer telling me to do things all the time. What we hear more about today in the business world anyway, and I know that's only about half of our crowd, is strategy. We hear more about strategy. But people often mix those two things up or even combine them into something called strategic planning. And there's just short of infinite books on strategic planning, and that's not what this presentation is about. But I do really want to, this is my bone to pick. Those two things are different, strategy and planning. And if you stay with me through this next section, I'm going to expose a blind spot that maybe some of you list makers or you planners have. For the most part, strategic planning has nothing to do with planning at all. With strategy at all. It has the root word in it. You see strategy in there, but it's not the same. Instead, like strategic planning it's just a set of activities, it's sticky notes, it's a list of things that your company or enterprise or you want to do. So let's say I'm part of a marketing team and I want to start a marketing campaign for X product. Well, I would make a plan for that. Or this gentleman on the side here, he's manufacturing. He's going to make a new factory. He's going to start up a new factory for widget Y. That's a plan. But with that plan, and say you successfully build that plant or that product is launched, there's no guarantee that the business is going to be in any better position or anybody's going to be any happier. Strategy, on the other hand, is a set of choices or goals that this is me, I'm for my own business or for me, sets me up to succeed in a way that suits me only. Those books that I just showed you, I've read 4 or 5 of those books, and those books sell because they're filled with what a lot of people think are silver bullet solutions. But what works for Joe's engineering isn't going to work for my company. And it's important to know that. Strategies is a comprehensive and complementary set of choices and goals that are going to set you up to succeed. And it's tailored just to you, not XYZ company, not Susan 3 doors down, just you. And that strategy needs to be coherent and cohesive for it to actually be a great strategy. This is what I do for a living now. Planning doesn't have the same coherence. It's just a list of activities. Marketing people want to sell product X. Manufacturing want to build a factory for widget Y. No explicit specification on how it's going to accomplish what the business really needs. So why do leaders spend so much time planning? And I would sit in these strategy sessions and I would work with these business owners, and we would get into VUCA. We'd get into like, okay, what's going to happen? Like supply chain. Remember that COVID thing? Remember that boat stuck in the water? You couldn't get your doodads for. It's like, no, man, that's never going to happen again. We're cool now. That's all behind us. Like, oh yeah, hey, okay. So that's it. We always want to go back to planning because it's safe. It's there. It's right in front of us. It's inside the windshield, not over the hood ornament. So plans, for example, this is, if you're in the accounting world, plans have to do with resources that you're going to use, the costs you're going to spend. Those are controllable. Let's dig into this. Oh man, small group. No, maybe we'll just keep going here. The tricky part about strategy is you're actually going to have to take a guess about what the future is going to look like in order to set up your enterprise to succeed. And already some of you are nodding your head. You're like, that sucks, because what if you're wrong? We don't like being wrong. But I'm going to, as I finish this presentation, I would like you to invite this idea into your head about making little choices, testing them, and not being committed to these 5 or 10-year plans. Like when I was taking business classes, it was all about 5-year strategic plans. Nobody does that anymore. Like, that's insane. If you show somebody a 5-year plan, they think you are categorically crazy. Even a 1-year plan feels like you're throwing darts at a board now because the world's changing so fast. So, yeah. So with strategy, it requires us to go out on a limb in the face of VUCA. There's that thing in the brain again. We don't want to do that. So if you spend your time planning, know that somewhere, someone else is building a strategy to win. And I think the future, this next 5 years, especially in small communities like this that have a different set of challenges, like keeping employees in town, getting technology into town, getting people to the summer festivals. There's different challenges for these. And I don't want to live in a world where a drone's dropping my milk off on my front doorstep. I want to live in a world where there's small communities like this. I grew up in one. I think it's important. Right now, we're trending towards 5 companies owning everything in our country in the next 10 years. And that's why I do this. That's my why right now. So, but we need everybody. I mean, I can't run Anytime Fitness for you. I need people that are doing these things to actually think about what's coming down the pipeline. We had a conversation today about why Marmot Basin's thriving this year, because they made a conscious choice to bring in that technology where you put that thing in your glove and you go doot, doot. They don't have those people there anymore. Lines are shorter, people are happier, cash in the cash register. Okay, back to my story. This is me, and no, I'm not about to hang myself on the top of this building, although a couple times it was pretty close there, but this is where I would go to think about my strategy. When I had problems, the building's finished now, and this is the 3rd floor, but I go up here and it's all developed now, but I look out at the world and get super pensive. But around this time, as I was building the building, as I mentioned, I was running an engineering firm. I was starting to see new players show up in my market. And these new players were so bold that they would actually take my proposal, cut off my logo and my header, glue theirs on, like cross out my number and put like 50% on there. They'd be like, yeah, whatever Dennis is going to do, we'll do it for half the price. And that doesn't last long, but it was creating some pressure on my business. And we were the largest in North America, and we had established really good relationships with, probably some people, we were in these types of communities. So my natural monkey brain was saying, shit, Dennis, you gotta do this. You gotta compete on price. You gotta bring your price down. So I'm up here and I'm thinking like, man, that doesn't feel right. I actually think the business could go away. I could lose everything. Our margins were good, and we were relying on those margins for a lot of our investments we were doing in technology and stuff. So I can't provide that service at the same cost as these guys. So instead, up here in doing that systems thinking, I zoomed out and I was able to convince myself that I was able, if I could reduce the lead time of my projects, that I was going to be able to keep all my customers and they were going to pay that same price. And it wasn't a gamble, it was well thought out. But I tested that. I went out and I said, hey, what if, and this is that short intervals of testing your strategy out. Next projects came in. Hey, I know this other guy's trying to do it for half the price, but for that $40,000, if it's different between you and me, like I'm going to get it to you in 3 months. What do you think about that? He's like, oh yeah, 3 months, no problem. Yeah, that's worth 40 grand to me. So it's just thinking about those things. Quite often the answer is right there for you. I'm going to skip through these. We don't need to freak anybody out anymore, but pick your nightmare. VUCA's coming. I don't know what your world entails. So in strategy, you have to do your homework. Life and business are going to get a great deal harder. And as a leader, you need to be okay with that. You don't know the future. You can't predict it. You can't tell the future. You don't have a crystal ball, but you have to accept that things are going to be changing. The second thing I'd like to share with you on this part is you're going to be wrong a lot of the time. Leave breadcrumbs. Actually document or write down how you got to these choices that you're going to make, whether they're in your life or in your business or at your job, because that's actually the most valuable part. Very few of us actually want to go back and look at a mistake that we made. But if you can look at them, you can understand where your logic is flawed. So have the discipline to do that. That's what my best clients are doing right now. They're like, man, 2 years ago, we thought that this was going to happen. Like now I can't get a loan. I can't get this machine. So now I have to do this equity raise or something. Okay, rip through this. Yeah, this next section is going to stir some stuff up in you guys. Again, it's intentional. So I call this section the right answer to the wrong problem. As an engineer or with a career in engineering, you tend to get a bit nerdy on things. And obsessive about some things in particular. And for me, I get really worked up when I see people telling a story or selling something that is inaccurate or false or makes no logical sense. So I do apologize in advance for some of you for this section, but there's just too much at stake now. Like, yeah, we'll get into it. So we all have a choice. We vote every day with our dollars. You voted with your time to come here. So what are you doing with that? And especially knowing that we're heading into this fourth industrial revolution, I think it's even more important that we're cognizant of how we're spending our time. So the first industrial revolution, 1750s, machines start to replace humans, but they were powered by coal and steam. Pretty clunky. It's a long time ago, but not really when you think about it. Second industrial revolution, industrial combustion engine. We find oil. Yes, we got cars now. This is amazing. See you later, horsies. This is around the 1950s, 1960s. Third, we get this. And I'm old enough. I would have been around, high school when my school started bringing in these personal computers, and I had one in the house. So I actually got to see the advent of this. Electricity's taken over. We have complex circuitry, transistors. All that technology starts to come in. We get things like this, changes our life again. And now we're in the middle of this. And as I said before, this really kind of freaks me out, but we don't really know what's happening. Like some of you probably have your phone making emails for you now. Like that's there. You can decide whether you're sending it or a robot sending your email. Like, yeah, clean that up a bit. I sound a little bit stupid there. Can you make that go away? So what is happening now is there's this pressure for us to merge everything together, our toasters, our fridges, ourselves, with this giant information center. And whether you have positive or negative thoughts about the World Economic Forum, that's the reality. All of the big businesses that we hand our money over to, like I use one of these, the guy that runs that business is getting me to merge all of my information, my phone, my toaster, maybe even this one day with the super. So what does that mean for you? What does that mean for your business? Again, I'm not trying to say this is bad or good, but this is happening. There's a flaw in all that. We're Albertans, this is what we do, right? This is how we built our province. And one of these barrels of oil here is the equivalent of 4.5 man-years of calories. How many people knew that? So one barrel of oil, 4.5 humans. How many barrels of oil do you think you guys use in a year on average? Let me take a stab. Yesterday, somebody was pretty close. I need somebody courageous. 200. Good guess. It's 22. You take a lot of trips to Cancun, my friend. So this is how many barrels of oil on average we use. And this is a blended Canada-US statistic, 22 barrels of oil. 22 barrels of oil times 4.5 man-years. So every year we have the luxury of expending 100 equivalent man-years of calories. If you go back 400 years, every year we use 100 men's worth of calories in how we run our lives. So that's a huge metabolism of energy that wasn't available and arguably isn't going to be available in the same capacity here in shortly. And this isn't an argument about whether or not we've hit peak oil or peak gas or peak coal. You can pick your graph, pick your poison. Every graph shows now that we're there. We've hit peak oil. We definitely have hit peak coal. So we have this to deal with. And I mean, we talk about it to some degree, but there's this thing called renewables. Like that's the silver bullet. It's gonna solve all of our problems. Here's the reality. So I will take the European Union as an example because they really document things. When they're leaning into VUCA, they'll put it in white papers, they'll publish it. So by 2030, the European Union says that they're going to have 1/3 of their energy supplied by renewables. Right now they're at 4%. So what is that, 2030? So say, whatever, let's just say 6 years, they're going to make that quantum leap. So cool. There's a lot of things in motion. There's a lot of technology being developed. And then by 2040, they're going to have 2.8 billion tons of batteries to store that energy. Those are just numbers, like, cool. So that's why I'm saying this is our best answer to the wrong question right now. This is their minds, like we're destroying the planet to save the planet right now. And this isn't like a Greenpeace presentation. What I'm saying is right now on the planet Earth, we can mine, well, what we mine for lithium, it's going to take us 16,000 years at our current mining capabilities, 16,000 years to come up with 2.8 billion tons of batteries. Sounds doable? I don't know. Anybody in here? You know, it's things like that. I got a whole list of them because this is kind of what I came across when I was building that building. I had a guy come up to me and he said, "Hey, Dennis, cool building. You know, you got all these solar panels on there, but like, what's your plan to replace those?" Like, what do you mean, dude? I just opened the building. He's like, "Yeah, I know, but you know, those things eventually have to get replaced." I was like, "Oh yeah, I knew that." And yeah, like I guess 20, 25 years, like, well, what's the plan for that? So this isn't going to be a net zero building. Somebody's going to have to spend another $1.5 million to put energy on this building. And it really got me thinking that renewable energy isn't that, it's rebuildable. Everywhere you see one of these, this has a 1.5 ton neodymium magnet in it that needs to get serviced every 15 years. So we have to start thinking about this not as it's just going to make our problem go away. It's rebuildable. It takes energy to rebuild that source of energy. And why am I getting into this? Because we're all going to have to pay the price tag for that. It is going to be baked in how we run our lives. The cost of my ski ticket at Marmot next year, whatever, the price at the pump, it's all going to come back to us. And we have to be mindful of that. Not to mention every one of these you see, there's a copper wire the size of your arm heading back out to the transmission line. So we just take copper. I'll give you a second example. Right now on the planet, we can mine around 25 million tons of copper a year. So to go net zero by 2040 to fully electrify our planet, we need 125 years of copper mining. And all the easy stuff's gone already. Not to mention the diesel fuel to mine it and the water, destroying the planet. Those are obvious. So we would need all that copper in the next 5 to 10 years to build the infrastructure to actually have a fully electrified planet by 2050. That's the best answer right now. So they call me a skeptic. Like, I wouldn't be up here if I didn't think there was a way through it. I just think we need to be mindful that what we're being sold as the answer has some pretty big holes in it. And we have some young people in the audience. I'm sorry. This is what your dumb parents are doing right now. So that's heavy. You know, what's in our news feeds about, you know, this is how we're going to save the planet. Maybe isn't all that it's cracked up to be. Running out of oil, that's for sure. We're running out of coal. Not only that, the carbon tax that's going to be put on communities like this for using the technologies that we're stuck with, that's going to impact us. And then we're running out of minerals, the stuff to actually technology our way out of this problem with. So I don't know anybody in here that isn't going to affect. And now we've metabolized this sugar packet, COVID stimulus package that our government's printed this money. Now we're going to have to deal with inflation, like super crazy inflation for the next little bit. If you haven't already felt that, $100 of groceries is pretty light now. So where do solar panels come from? Yep, there's that guy again, elbow deep right in the West. EV components, minerals, and this guy's right behind for minerals too. But essentially, we're at the mercy of some pretty significant geopolitical forces right now for this magic wand that's supposed to be waved to solve all of our problems. You get the point. I can rest that case. So our current paradigm is that we're just going to find more or technology our way out of it. What about nuclear, Dennis, or thorium, or all these crazy things? Yeah, well, we have 70 years of uranium, or we have 110 years of thorium. Again, that's planning. That's not strategy. The very thing that I've been shared with you guys at the beginning is what our species is doing now. It's like, well, what about that? Let's burn that, you know? Can't do that anymore. Bless you. So when I took my first breath on this planet, we were using about a third the energy that we are today. That's 25,000 terawatt hours, which means nothing to this audience. But in order for us to sustain, not yeah, we got to curb this. In order to actually, for us to live with 8 billion humans on the planet, this is where we got to be. Right now, we're using more than one Earth's worth of stuff every year. And I mean, depends which data and it's growing. So we're out of Earth to use. So again, I don't know what you guys do for a living, but I know that we all have to eat and we all drive a car, and some of you guys have a business. This is going to impact your business. This is what VUCA looks like. You know, you got the telephone here. On the bottom here, it's years to adopt. Everybody loves colorful graphs. That's why I put this one in. Fighting the lasagna again. So this is the adoption rate. So the amount of years it takes to get to 100% adoption. So if you look here from the telephone all the way down to the smartphone, it's taking nearly no time for technology to be adopted. Things are moving fast. So for me, starting my first business 20 years ago, if I was to try and start that business today using the paradigm that I had 20 years ago, I wouldn't last a month. This is ChatGPT. It's a real thing. How many people in here have used ChatGPT for something? How many people use it for their emails and stuff like that? You know, they use that little button. So yeah, it's so handy for certain emails. So ChatGPT here, it took a whopping 5 days for 1 million people to adopt that technology. That's bananas. Like when I think about it, that's 1 million people using ChatGPT in 1 week. And you take to 100 million people, it took only 2 months. Like that. That's a third of the United States using something in 2 months. And if you look at something like Netflix, only 25 years ago, it took them 10 years to get to 100 million users. A little bit of a different business model. But you can see here, the whole idea is as we go through time, the amount of time it takes to adopt is quite a bit less. I usually speak to business owners, so this is for you guys. This graph should keep every business owner up in their sleep. This here is a graph. So T0 is to say I started a business 20 years ago. Every year that my business is in business, this is the probability of my business failing. So if I go to whatever, 80%, 20% of businesses are going to be gone after 3 years, down to 50%, 7, 8 years. And we've heard that number that around 10 years, over half the businesses that are started are gone. And most of these are gone is because they become obsolete. They don't want to accept the inevitable change that's coming. They don't want to adapt, or what they're selling, like Blockbuster, we don't need it anymore. This is another why we're going to struggle. We just don't want to put money into developing technology here. Something in a Canadian brain says like, we'll let the Europeans do that, and then we'll just kind of buy that technology, or we'll just what happens here. So we are investing less and less in R&D and new stuff every year. That has to change, because this is what the rest of the world is doing. They're recognizing that they have to spend more on that. And I have to convince my clients all the time to try and spend more money on trying new things. We're just kind of a safer culture. And here's our friend AI showing up. This is Canada right here. This is a list of developing nations. If you look here, we're around 5% adoption of AI. There's some countries, this is Portugal and Finland, they're up over 10% already. We're lagging in a lot of the things that are going to set us up to succeed as a country, as a nation. And it's enough about that. So I made a conscious choice to present that to you, partly to, I guess, build up a little bit of credibility, but not to freak you out, but just like this is real. What's happening inside of you right now is you're probably freaking out a little bit, like a deer seeing a forest fire. Like, I just want to go and watch Netflix and eat popcorn in bed and shut off my phone. This is crazy. But it's the exact opposite that has to happen. We got to lean into these struggles. It's going to happen whether you're participating or not. And my reason for being here is to motivate you to actually look at what's coming over the hood ornament and not listen to what your phone is telling you. But actually, what does your life need? What does your world need? What do you feel compelled to do? So we have a choice on how we buy at home. If you want to buy a jug of milk that gets delivered by a drone, that's cool. I don't, and I want people like the people in this room to be in business 10 years from now. Okay, so there's 3 types of people when they see this information. Number 1, there's those of us that are going to defend the status quo. And there's like, it's good. This guy's crazy. After all, his last name is Cuku. So that's not my stage name. That's my legit last name. So I was destined to be a crazy anyway. So about 50% or more of us, and this is, I have all these white papers if anybody wants to read more on it. 50% of us or more are going to defend the status quo. And they're like, not me. This is good. It'll all blow over. We'll find some sort of crazy mineral on planet X that we can mine and bring back, just like in that movie. It'll be amazing. And a good example of this, who had one of these in their house, either when there's some older folks. Come on, it's time for you guys to put your hands up. There we go. I had one of these in my house. I had like this fancy screen on there. I had the word processor one. Like, it was fixing things that I was typing. Like, it was blowing my mind. I could actually type rubbish into it and it would tell me that it was rubbish. This is Smith Corona. They had a complete monopoly on word processing in the 1980s and leading into the early 1990s. Who owns a typewriter now? Who owns anything that has Smith Corona on it? Smith Corona is not around because they're in this category run. They refuse to confront the facts of reality, that there was a computer revolution coming. So IBM goes, this is in a lot of business books. IBM comes to Smith Corona, is like, hey, you guys want to do stuff? We've got this thing called the computer. You guys have this thing called market share. Do you want to? So Smith Corona passed and they said, IBM, you're crazy. We've got the best. You should see our next typewriters that we're coming out with. They're amazing. Not only do they have a word processor, it's got a bigger screen. People are going to love this. That's why they're not around anymore. I mean, it's a perfect example of technology disruption, exactly what's happening with AI and ChatGPT right now. I've got 3 friends that don't have a job anymore, friends-ish, because one of them was a copywriter, one of them was a playwright, another one makes movies. He doesn't have he's 2 of his movies have been canceled for funding because people want to hit a button, pick their actors, and the movie's gonna play for itself. So that's what Netflix and Hulu are investing their technology in, is completely artificially generated. We're just gonna be watching, we're gonna be in this giant echo chamber pretty soon. So fight it, please. So why did Smith Corona pull the trigger? They believe they could beat the competition with this crazy, awesome technology they had. Wrong. They found it too difficult to give up their cash cow. They had this insane market share and like this money was coming in. No, the future, that's not for us. And what's most important is they were locked into this one frame of reference and refused to consider alternative situational views. So the second category, so the first 50%-ish, second, some of us are going to realize that this isn't really working anymore. This is about 1/3 of us. And that group's going to start to make changes in their life, whether it's using a little bit less or saving a bit more or whatever. But they're going to start to strategize and work with VUCA. They're going to accept reality and they're going to start to change their situation. They're going to start to align what they want with what they need. And a lot of young people are actually doing this right now. As silly as they seem, they want crazy things, but they're getting closer in line with what they need. Kind of like the hippie movement of the 70s. So this group is going to start to align what they do with what they want, with what they need. And the third group is this small group that's actually going to work to engineer the systems that are failing. So if this isn't going to work, what are we going to use now? Okay, time for me to wrap it up, I think, here. So I shared with you some of my own experiences to help anchor the story of this radical change we're going to see. We're all in it together. That we can't deny. It was always going to be this way. We were always going to find oil and we were always going to find coal and we're going to be in this, pickle. If we didn't, mine the oil out or explore for oil out in this area, then somebody was going to come conquer our nation and do it for us, right? So we can have peace of mind with that. Nothing is wrong with how things are. It's just happening. And nature always works to expend the least amount of energy it possibly can. That's just one of the laws of thermodynamics. But now as conscious creatures, we need to draw on everything, all the information we have. I shared with you already that your brain is already it's going to want to delete everything that I said as soon as you walk out that door. I guarantee you that. So you have to work with that, knowing that you're set up to fail and what's coming. How do you manage that? So I think I'll leave it there. I don't know how much. I think we're at time.
Good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully I made good on my promise. Well, not to scare the shit out of you, but to leave you with at least one nugget. I know I made you think about something, even if it's how much you hate me right now. But that's actually part of why I'm here. You don't have to like what's happening. It is happening. So thank you for your time.